On tonight's episode of Mr. Norris's In Case You Missed It, we look at the Oregon Trail and settlers moving west to occupy the West Coast. We even look at why it was so difficult to travel on this trail and the fabled legendary Donner Party. Hey, hi, hello, and what is up, everybody? It's your host, Mr. Norris, the history teacher with the good hair. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Oregon Trail and settlers traveling westward to reach the Oregon country. All right, I'm excited. Let's get into it. Well, first, what you need to know is the Oregon country was first discovered and explored by Americans Lewis and Clark during their expedition, which I've actually outlined in a previous video. Shameless plug there. During their expedition in 1804 through 1806, they discovered the Oregon country and kind of go out there and map things out. However, while that country is very nice and rich and fertile, it's difficult to reach because in order to get out to the Oregon country from the East Coast or the middle of the United States, you need to cross over some pretty ridiculous geographic barriers, obstacles, if you will. The Rocky Mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains. So when Lewis and Clark make their discovery or exploration in 1804, 1806, Oregon largely goes unoccupied for the next couple of decades. It's not until 1824 where there's a real break and people actually traveling out to the Oregon country. And that is in 1824, a traveler explorer named Jedediah Smith discovers the South Pass, which is a low, flat way to travel through the Rocky Mountains instead of literally climbing over the Rocky Mountains because, you know, that's no fun to do. Not that I've done that, but I can assume that it's not. But the South Pass was a much easier way for people to get through the Rocky Mountains. And if you're going to trust anybody with, you know, exploration and navigation and where to go, you would trust somebody named Jedediah, right? Like that guy you could just picture would be like, I think we just go over that hill yonder and that's the South Pass. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm going to listen to you. Your name's Jedediah. By the way, look at a picture of him. Same hairdo as Harry Styles. So not only is he great at navigation, great hair. Hats off to you, Jedediah Smith. Fantastic. Anyways, when he discovers the South Pass, this makes people want to go travel out to Oregon even more because now the passage is going to be a little bit easier. The trip's going to be a little bit easier for people. So people start slowly going out to the Oregon country after 1824. And news spreads pretty quickly about, like I said before, how rich and fertile the area is. There's lots of farmland. If you've ever been out to that part of the country, there's lots of timber and resources. And if you're a poor settler, kind of just kicking it around in Kentucky or Tennessee, which, you know, at that time was the frontier and barely struggling to get by and to make ends meet, the Oregon country looks pretty appealing to you and your family. You can go out there and really get fat off the land, if you will. But really, it's not until 1846 that we really see the Oregon explosion of people migrating out there. And in 1846, our president, James K. Polk, who I nicknamed Mr. Manifest Destiny, he decides to strike a deal with Great Britain, and we actually gain control of Oregon below the 49th parallel line. Up until that point, Oregon was joint occupied with ourselves and with Great Britain. They strike a deal, and we get everything below the 49th parallel, which becomes Oregon and Idaho and Washington and you know, a couple of states out in the Pacific West of the country there. 1846, settlers start lining up by the dozens, thousands, if you will, to travel out to the Oregon country and try to, you know, make a better life for themselves. Now, think about this. Settlers, they have to pack up basically everything they own on wagons with their families, and sometimes not even just like their immediate family, like even like other people from their town, large parties, large groups is what they call them, and travel out on the Oregon Trail is what the name of this pathway to the West becomes. And this is a very difficult and arduous journey to make. If you're familiar with the game Oregon Trail from the 90s, I know I am because I'm a 90s kid, grew up in the 90s. Pretty much the game went like this. It was our version of Fortnite, kids, right? The game that you play till your eyes bleed, where you're like, I need to play this video game. We used to play Oregon Trail, but basically it was impossible to beat. You would play the game and pretty much just everybody would eat poison berries and die, and that was pretty much it. The actual Oregon Trail wasn't too far off of that, and I'll explain that more in a second. But you'd pack up your whole family and travel out west. A lot of people left and departed from Independence, Missouri, And the trail from Independence, Missouri to Oregon was about 2,000 miles. So this is a 2,000-mile trek that's going to take your family about 4 to 5 months to make. And you're going to have some difficulties along the way, to say the least. Now, during this time period, it's estimated between 1846 to the end of the 1860s that about 400,000 people travel west of the Oregon Trail in order to try to improve their lives and live a better life in Oregon. Of the 400,000 people, it's estimated that about 20,000 of those people don't make it or die along the way. Now, those numbers aren't perfect. They could be a little bit lower than that. They could be a little bit higher than that. Who the heck knows? So about 5% of everybody who traveled in those 2 decades out to Oregon died. However, a lot of those deaths took place kind of at the beginning stages of travel. So it just goes to show you there was a huge human toll that was thrown at this Oregon Trail, settlers trying to go out there and reach this Oregon country. Why were there so many deaths? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. One would be lack of supplies, right? Think you're traveling 2,000 miles. If you run out of food or something that you might need, your family could literally die, right? If you didn't pack up enough food. And for a lot of these people, it was hard to guesstimate exactly how much food they would need for 4 to 5 months, 2,000 miles. And if you're not an expert frontiersman who's used to living off the land, lack of supplies might do you and your family in. Lack of knowledge is another thing that didn't help a lot of these pioneers traveling west on the Oregon Trail. A lot of them were just simple farmers who one day, got it in their heads, you know what, I'm going to move out to Oregon. But they didn't really know anything about living out on the frontier, being a pioneer, living off the land. So one poor decision could really lead to the death of your family, right? Hey guys, let's eat all these berries. Well, they're poison and now you're all dead, right? Or let's try to travel across this river. Well, the river current knocks your wagon over and you lose all of your supplies and then your family's dead, right? Another thing that killed a lot of people on the Oregon Trail is disease or sickness, right? A lot of times when human beings move to places that they've never been before, they catch new sicknesses and diseases that they've never had. So a lot of people, whether it was dysentery or cholera or typhoid or the measles, a lot of people got sick and didn't make it on the Oregon Trail. Keep in mind, if you got sick along the trail, it's not like there's a CVS or a Walgreens nearby or an urgent care where you can pop in and get a prescription and get some medicine. You kind of had to just try to power through it. And a lot of times, especially back then, that just didn't work. People, weren't as nutritious as they are now and didn't make it. So you have lack of supplies, lack of knowledge, disease, and then extreme conditions. Think about it. Over these 4 to 5 months, you're going to see all the seasons. You're going to see brutally cold winters. You're going to see really hot summers. And you're also going to have extreme conditions as far as the geography. You're going to have to travel over hills and valleys and rivers and streams and mountains, the Rocky Mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains. So extreme conditions. And for people who aren't prepared for this, that's going to be difficult, right? You can't just throw on your New Balance sneakers and, climb the Rocky Mountains. That's just not how it works back then. If you don't know what you're doing, you're probably not going to make it. Now, that takes me to the most extreme case of really a poor situation on the Oregon Trail, and that leads us to the Donner Party in 1846. This party of about 98 people departs on the Oregon Trail, and their leader, Mr. George Donner, decides to try to take a shortcut through the Sierra Nevada mountains. He tells his party, hey, I heard rumors of a shortcut, and they take the trail. You know that at some point during this, his wife was definitely like, I don't know where we are. I think we should turn around and ask somebody. And he was like, I know exactly where I'm going. I could just perfectly see that dynamic. Kids, if you've been in cars with your parents before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyways, I digress. George Donner decides to take this shortcut, and it actually only winds up adding 100 miles to the trip, and they get stranded. Their wagon breaks, and a huge snowstorm hits. And this is right in about November 1846, and it's not until February 1847 that rescue teams actually find them. When they do, they realize that of the original 98 people, the Donner Party that set out for the Oregon Trail or on the Oregon Trail, only about 47 of them remain, and it becomes very obvious very quickly that they've been eating each other in order to survive. Yeah, that got dark real fast, right? Honey, could you pass me a leg for the meal tonight? What are we having for dinner? Baby back ribs? Okay, great. Yeah, sounds good. That's enough cannibalism jokes I'm going to get some parent emails. Okay. But yeah, that's like worst case scenario. These people got lost and had to eat each other. So if you survived all of that stuff on the trail, the disease, the lack of supplies, lack of knowledge, extreme conditions, a couple of other things that you might have had to survive, murderers or robbers on the Oregon Trail, as this was a lawless country, and Native Americans who are out there who may not want you on their land and may just kill you. So if you survived all of that stuff, then you had an opportunity to make it to Oregon and start a new life for you and your family and populate the West Coast there. So there you have it. That's the Oregon Trail. People traveling out on the Oregon Trail to Oregon country to settle the West Coast, about 400,000 people in 2 decades. And it's really crucial in getting the West Coast of the United States populated and settled and really making us a nation that goes from coast to coast. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, comment, or subscribe. Any of that would be just fine. Please remember that history is life. And in the words of George Washington, the surest basis for public happiness is knowledge. So go out there and get some. Have a good night, everybody.